we're fairly clear about where we want to go. So, all right. Give me a second here while I turn on the display, and hopefully things will start working in a few minutes. So far, we have looked at what planning is all about. I've taken you back to the promoting community change text, so where you had that review, and we've looked at both Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Chapter 1 being focused on the very first steps that you're going to be involved with essentially, again, getting to know the agency, answering questions about it. And then Chapter 2, focusing on the stakeholders and doing a SWOT analysis. Okay, have I forgotten anything there? Okay. How many of you are working fairly well with the worksheet assignments for this week? I saw, David, you got yours in just this morning, so don't be envious. But what are you noticing as you go through those worksheets? I'm assuming that for most of you there's a little bit of frustration there.
Yeah, I don't have all the information.
You certainly don't. David didn't either. No. What do you have to do with these worksheets? They are not designed for you to sit down and do it like most homework assignments.
You have to get out and communicate with people.
I'm tempted just to ask for a complete copy of their grant.
Good luck on that.
I know, that's what I was saying.
Actually, asking for a copy of the grant is something you should be able to do, and you should be able to get, you should be able to maybe not take it away with you, but you should be able to go to the agency and sit down and read it. It's a public document.
Screenshot it with your phone.
Not all 200 pages, huh?
Oh.
Yeah, so that's a good idea. But as you get into the worksheet, and actually I brought a copy to put up here, or I transferred a copy over. As you start looking at the worksheet, they do ask for the current mission statement. It's not the first time you've been asked for it. But these questions about year of operation, number of board members, the staff, that's not something you're going to know automatically, not unless you're already working there. So I hope you have that contact person you can ask those questions of. Much of this, I'm looking at worksheet 1.5. Much of this you've sort of looked at already, the short description of appointment. Now notice that it has multiple programs here, and they want you to look at the different services provided by your agency, so that if you are working as Jarrell is with Salvation Army, they have a lot of services. So you're going to be breaking it down and giving a short description of each one of the services and also how it's funded. And this is also an exercise that if you're not automatically thinking when you're working with an agency of who funds them, how are they, what kind of oversight do they have, this is an exercise to help get you thinking along those lines. So you're going to write out all their different programs, even though in your project you may be focusing on just one element. So if you're looking at essentially the Dean of Students and all the different programs that he is responsible for, write those out, and then we're going to be focusing on that part, that effect that has to do with what you're doing. Okay? And so as you do this, let me know if you have questions. I recognize that you may not have everything all at once, but I do expect you to keep that in mind and keep working on getting it. You'll get feedback from the first set of of worksheets you turned in, and for the most part, the feedback is, I need more information along this line, I need a little bit more detail here, keep working on this. And talking to the class on Friday, you said, okay, give us the grade that's going to be the low grade, and it won't look so good. But when you see that low grade, know that the only way that low grade is going to stay there is if you never turn a revision in. Okay. So you have a chance to get more information. And because you're going to the same source for information as you get worksheets, look ahead to see what kind of information you're going to be asking for. You know that in the next week we're going to be looking at mission and vision and values. And you're already being asked this on worksheet 2.1. What is a programmatic vision? How does it fit with the mission of the program? It's addressed in step 2, even though the focus is, they really go to a focus of what to look for in a mission statement, a vision statement, and clarifying values. That's in step 3. So there is going to be what appears to be some repetition, but it's not bad. It's like flexing muscles, and you know when you're getting in shape to do something, reps, you do a lot of reps, right? And you build that muscle each time you get a little bit stronger, a little bit more. So once you have the information, though, for the most part, you won't necessarily have to go back and ask more unless you only have that partial information. Right now, you're gaining the overview, and then we're going to be looking more at specifics. Any questions about what these worksheets are asking for you? Now, 2.1 is suggesting that you are going to be looking at and asking questions, and I'm not asking for so much a formal survey, but asking questions to see how the staff envisions the future. So this is going to be worksheet 2.1. And especially we'll be talking to the staff. With worksheet 2.2, you may, and that's okay if you tell me, that you're going to need to identify some external stakeholders. Remember that the clients are external stakeholders, and it depends on where you are looking whether or not you'll have access to the clients. Because they're not going to break any confidentiality rules. You're not going to be given any ability to do anything that would compromise their services to their clients in any way. But look then for, you're asking, who is the supporter? Who are the external stakeholders? One of the things you could do is go to Salvation Army works with, who else? They work with Red Cross a lot. They work with some of the charitable organizations. I think not strongly, but the Catholic Church has Catholic Charities. They work with everybody on that. You could go and look up some of the external stakeholders and ask them these questions. Normally, you would be very thorough. Asking one external stakeholder would not be enough. But for the purposes of this exercise, going to as many as you have easy access to would be all right, as long as you understand that when you're doing a thorough analysis, you're going to have to go to many more. Any questions there? Okay. I did put a due date of this as being tomorrow night, but I also recognize it's going to take you some time. The Dropbox closing date is actually on Sunday, so that you'll have time to go and work on this. So that's the worksheets. If you have questions, do let me know. But what I really wanted to work on today was working on the SWOT analysis. What I was concerned about is that your book doesn't give a lot of information about how to conduct a SWOT analysis, even though it's assuming that, especially with worksheet 2.1, that you have done so. Okay. So what I am going to do is take you to a PowerPoint that comes from the Community Toolbox. I've referenced the Community Toolbox before. Actually, I'm going to step back and introduce the Community Toolbox a little bit. What? Yeah. Okay. Community Toolbox is a service that was developed by quite a number of entities. It's been a while since I read their history, but over the last probably 30 years, it's been a very strong resource over the last 15 or 20 years. But to reach out to be a public access service for grassroots change. So if there are entities that want to know some of the basic skills related to growing communities, you can access it. So I've put the website on the board. It is, just remember, Community Toolbox. If you type in CTB, you'll probably get it, but the address is ctb.ku.edu. And if you type that in, you will see what I have on the projector right here. It will take you, if you want to watch a video about what they do, it's just, I think, sort of a motivational video, or if you want to scroll through their, what they call, basket of skills, or it's, again, overview of information. But if you want something specific, the part that I use all the time is up in the upper left corner. It says Learn a Skill. And if you click on that, it says Table of Contents or Toolkits. If you click on the Table of Contents, you are going to see, and I always found this a little overwhelming, and it's taken me time to really get to know and then watch it get developed as they have developed the different, what they call, chapters. If you look at that, you'll see the correlation between what we're doing and the information they have there. So anytime you'd like to know a little bit more, feel free to sort of dabble around in the Community Toolbox. Chapter 1 gives an overview of their model for community change and with other models. The models that I go by very much correlate with what Community Toolbox does because they are grassroots development more than top-down business models. So it has to do with empowerment. Okay. So chapter 3, though, it says assessing community needs and resources. And if you click on that, they have section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have actually 24 sections of different aspects of assessing community needs, in which I think it is, which one is it? Notice that they have understanding and describing the community. That's something you've already done, but if you want to look and see what they have to say, you might find it helpful. Conducting public forums and listening sessions. Very often when you want to do an analysis or to get an idea of where your stakeholders are, how they perceive the agency, it's good to have a forum. And if what you're doing is you want to hear from external stakeholders, very often a public forum is your way to go to get the most impact of those who feel vested in it. You can also do surveys, which are written surveys, but the information you get will be more superficial, and sometimes, depending on who you survey, you may find that the investment of the person filling out the form to getting correct answers isn't as high. But in a public forum, it means somebody took the time to come, and they are concerned, and they have something they want to say. So public forums, collecting information about if you have a problem, analyzing community problems, conducting focus groups. But in this, it's section 14, they say conducting a SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And as I introduced on Friday, The strengths and weaknesses focus on internal strengths, opportunities, and threats are external. So I'm going to show you this, PowerPoint. If you go under Section 3, number 14, in the Community Toolbox, you'll find this very same PowerPoint presentation. I have saved this to my computer, so I will upload it for those of you who are online. SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and strength. What is a SWOT analysis? Anybody here, I'm going to ask it again, anybody here ever do a SWOT analysis before? Okay, Jarrell. But it's new to the rest of you. Okay. It guides you to identify the positives and negatives inside your organization, and also outside of it. So the positive and negative strengths and weaknesses outside of the organization or in the external environment. If you look ahead in your book, we're going to be looking at the external environment in step 4, I believe, of your book. Okay? Developing a full awareness of your situation can help you in both strategic planning and decision making. So whether you are doing a simple plan or a strategic plan, and I'm expecting that you are doing probably a fairly simple plan based on need of your agency. Is that right? Okay. When to use the SWOT? Well, your book is suggesting it right away. It's number 14 after focus groups and surveys and conducting interviews. All of those are also in your in the Community Toolbox. Actually, we'll be coming back to surveys and interviews because before you get finished with this class, I want you to have a pretty good handle on how to go about drafting a good survey and how to go about conducting a solid interview. Okay, so to make decisions on your initiative, determine where change is possible. How many of you say, hey, I know where we're headed as far as the change we want? Anybody? So you're still going, okay, one of your challenges in the next 2 weeks is in interacting with your agency, to figure out a direction towards a change that would be positive. Now, I didn't see many of you raise your hands, but I have perceived that David and also Diamond have a pretty good idea of the direction of change you're going to be looking at, right? Okay. And as the rest of you do, it'll help you as you go through these worksheets too. Okay. And to adjust and refine plans mid-course. So even though we're talking about right now doing a SWOT analysis at this point, anytime you want sort of a snapshot of how things are going, when you can reach out either to internal or external stakeholders and get that snapshot through a quick SWOT analysis. Okay. So the elements are internal factors. And the reason I like this is the fact that they go into a little bit more detail than your book does. When you're assessing the strengths and weaknesses of the organization, consider what the strengths as far as human resources are. Consider what the physical resources are. What do we mean by physical resources? Willie?
Physical resources?
Yeah.
That'd be like they have a building.
The building.
The land they have, or
yeah.
Depending on what they do.
Yeah, and so we're putting in to physical resources, built capital as well as physical capital as well as environmental capital. Financial resources, of course. How much money do you have available? In what form are those financial resources? What encumbrances do those financial resources have? That means what restrictions do you have on spending the different areas of funding you have? Okay, what are your strengths as far as your activities and the processes you use?
Like your outreach programs and your maybe your fundraisers.
Well, and even the direct services that are provided are activities and processes. And I've gotten to know quite a number of programs that have really great activities for kids. Kids have a lot of fun, but the way they carry it out doesn't necessarily reach all the kids that they want to reach. So processes too. Okay. And then also, what were your past experiences? So those are the strengths and weaknesses. Oh, and by the way, as you do so, your purpose is to be able to determine direction for growth. So you don't want to put the energy into making it a gripe session. You want it focused on where do we want to go and what resources do we have to help go there. Looking at external factors, the opportunity and the threats. What are future trends? What is the economy like? What are some of the funding sources? What are the demographics? Demographics mean what? Debbie?
Demographics would be like the area.
Anybody else? Demographics.
The people.
It's the people, but what about the people? You know, what kind of diversity do you have? What is the income level, the education level? What kind of backgrounds and interests and cultures and things are coming into the mix? The physical environment, any legislation, and we have a legislative session coming up. Local, national, and international events. And so when we talk about future trends, and I think I've already mentioned it here on the Highline, a lot of the services are recognizing that there's an aging population on the Highline, and all communities on the Highline are affected. So as we do so, the human resources are growing older, and I've heard many people say they go to a community meeting and everybody has gray hair. Yeah. And that means 20 years from now, even those folks are still very much committed and maybe even still vibrant. In the next 20 years, we're going to need people who will rise up and take over. So when I start looking at, and I'm starting to see that the people who are making a difference in Havre are younger than I am, which is pretty cool. Because I figure my role at this point is to be a support person, not to be leading the way. That helps empower the community. If they are dependent on an aging population, when that aging population is gone, then the community becomes weaker. But if that population, the older folks like me, really help inspire those coming after them to gain the skills, gain the commitment, find a pathway, even with busy lives, to be in the vanguard, then the community grows stronger. So, the economy. And we've had an up and down economy over the last 10 years. It was pretty down about 8 years ago. North Central Montana wasn't as directly impacted. People would say, if you didn't have as much to start with, you don't have as much to lose. And actually, we sort of felt that because there were places in the country that were really, really in bad shape. We didn't lose that much. We didn't have as much to lose. The funding sources are changing. So most of your agencies are looking at how those funding sources are changing. It's harder and harder to get grant funding, to get funding for colleges and universities, particularly student services, for even some of the activities in the community. I know HRDC finds it's one of the biggest challenges they have. And legislation. Okay. Local, national, international events. Do we think the upcoming election will impact where we go into the future? Sometimes, and you say yes. Sometimes we even think it will more so than another. Somebody reminded me at one point is that it really does impact, but our legislature has more of an impact than. So, I mean, we have checks and balances. So not to forget that we have checks and balances.
Isn't there like 5 Supreme Court justices that this president will be able to?
Potentially.
Potentially, I mean.
Potentially, it's huge, yes.
That's giant, that's way big.
That's way big. Yeah, and if you look at Supreme Court decisions over the last, I'm starting to really feel old, over the course of my lifetime, so we're looking since the 50s. Horrible to think that, but the decisions have changed in nature and scope, and the Supreme Court has taken on decisions that 50 years ago it never would have. So the direction of the Supreme Court is sometimes even scary, how powerful that they can be. So yes, it can. So you're going to be doing a SWOT analysis. How do you create it? First of all, you designate a leader or facilitator, and the facilitator's job is to ask you questions and get you to answer it. You know what brainstorming is. We're going to be doing some brainstorming in the afternoon class, those of you in that class, just so you know. And as we do so, you're going to give me information, I'm going to jot it on the board. If you get sort of off track, I might say, but we're going this way, remember this is our purpose. But the information comes from, and for it to be valid, the information has to come from the people from whom you seek information. And in brainstorming, no right, no wrong. If you're talking about the agency and they start talking about, you're from Red Cross and they start talking about Boys and Girls Club, you might want to get it back to talking about Red Cross. But if they're talking about Red Cross and just throwing out thoughts and ideas, it might be a little bit all over the place, but you jot it all down. Okay. So you designate a leader, and actually it's best, especially with a larger group, that you have one person facilitating and getting the ideas and another person jotting it down. Because sometimes the information comes so fast, and if somebody else is jotting it down, then you don't have to do two things at once. But one of the things that whoever's jotting it down is that you're writing it down sort of like that. You know, sometimes when I jot it down, you might be struggling and I'll say, is this what you're trying to say? So I am interfering a little bit, hopefully not much. I'm just trying to help you phrase. But sometimes with some SWOT analysis, you don't worry about it. You just write down whatever the other person says verbatim. Okay. Okay, so you have a leader, you have a recorder, you introduce what's going on. You let all participants introduce themselves if they don't already know each other. So you're reminded about the role each plays. So if you're working with external stakeholders, if it's in Havre, they probably already know each other, but you still introduce to remind of each stakeholder's role in your agency. Okay? If you break up into smaller groups, and you've all experienced that, each group should have a recorder. Okay? So sometimes if you have 30, 40 people, it helps to break up into smaller groups so each person really has a say. Another way that I've had them do it is they'll hand you a Post-it note, and you'll write each idea on a Post-it note, and then it all come together. And then once it all comes together and it's all on a huge chart, then as a team you might organize which ones are similar and which ones aren't. So anyway, if you have broken into groups, you reconvene at the agreed upon time and share the results. You discuss and record the results and prepare a written summary. So as you're recording the results, you're getting feedback to make sure that each person who has participated feels represented in the recording of the results. So you can then pull it together, and what will happen is you'll end up with a chart . So where they have listed the strengths, you will list the strengths. Where they have listed the weaknesses, you list the weaknesses. opportunities, and threats. So you ended up with a chart that shows it, and then you start looking and analyzing how one impacts the other. You can use it to identify the issues or problems. You can use it to set or reaffirm goals, and you can use it to create an action plan. Oops, that's the last part of it. So what I'm looking to is maybe on Friday we can do, based on what we know so far, and we're going to be the external stakeholders in this, is maybe create, so far what we have learned as far as a SWOT analysis, strengths and weaknesses, what we have learned so far from external stakeholders, opportunities and threats. It won't be as well documented, or it won't be as accurate as what you can do working with your organization, because Hopa Mountains is not right here. But at least it will give us an opportunity to analyze what we have learned so far. So if you are thinking that the next step is I'm going to ask you to do a SWOT analysis with your agency, you're right. Okay? It wouldn't hurt if you still need to reach out to your agency to get the information for worksheet 2.1 and worksheet 2.2. You might even, in talking about who the external stakeholders are, if talking to an external stakeholder, walk individuals through. You don't, with what I just walked you through, that was if you have a big group, you can still do it one-on-one and have somebody tell you their perspective in a SWOT analysis. It won't be as universally applicable because you will be working with just one person's perspective, but it will give you some information that will help you as you move ahead. Any questions about that? Okay. So, let me go back to plans. We started out week 1, August 29th to September 4th, with just introduction expectations, and I had you read the introduction and respond to that. In the second week, and I also had you choose an agency to start getting that information. Remember that? Then I took a step back and said, I really want you to read the Promoting Community Change to get a sense of where we're going with making a plan, to be able to build on what you've already learned. And so we stepped back, and then also that was when your agency of focus assignment was due. The next week, and also that week, I just sort of extended your week a little bit because we were still trying to sort some things out. And I said, okay, the best way for me is that your week actually starts on Wednesday instead of Monday. And I'm going to be fluid with that, but most assignments are going to be due Tuesday night. So that helps me focus in getting you ready for the following week. It helps me focus on Tuesday rather than Sunday when I'm working on all my other classes. Okay, but so week 2, 3 sort of blended together, and rather than being a little bit behind, we're a little bit ahead. So our week 5 actually, based on how I have put things on the website, our week 5 actually started last week. Not really, but that's how it's labeled. And so September 14th to the 20th, sorry for the typo, we're focused on chapter 1, and you did worksheets 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. This week you're working on the stakeholders, you're working on worksheets 1.5, 2.1, 2.2, and also on a SWOT analysis. Okay. Then next week, as we get finished with this week, as we go into next week, your assignment is to read chapter 3 on mission, visions, and values. You've already gotten the mission and been asked to look at the vision of your agency. And you're picking up on the values that you perceive, right? So you're already getting a lot of that. So I haven't actually decided, but you'll know by Wednesday which worksheets will be assigned. However, as we go through next week, chapters 1, 2, and 3 are the first section of your book. It's all about just becoming acquainted. Because with a strategic planning, your first step is to get acquainted with what you're doing and where you're going, and that's what you're accomplishing at this point. Therefore, at the end of next week, we're also going to start reviewing what you've learned so far. By that time, you will have had a chance to really get in touch with your contact person with your agency, get up to speed with your worksheets, even start working on revising any worksheets where I said, hey, I need a little bit more information here. Okay. And I hope that you'll have the feedback from the first set of worksheets back to you by Wednesday. So that by the end of next week, and we can talk about when and how, but it'll be time for a little bit of a review. Okay? And that will be sometime between Wednesday a week from now and Wednesday the following week. Then when we, okay, I may have some dates off there, so I may have to go back and revise it. But anyway, we will have that midterm and then go on to section 2 overview. A lot of what you're doing is book learning. There's a lot that you can't go into the details and apply, but I really want you to know, and that's why you'll be having a test to double check what you've learned out of your book. Most of you know I'm not a lover of tests, but I think this will be the best way under the circumstances. Any questions? Concerns?
So these worksheets that you just gave out, the 2.1, 2.2, and 1.5 are due by Sunday night?
Yes, they were really intended to be due tomorrow night, and I know that's unreasonable. So the Dropbox will stay open until Sunday. So you have this week, and that's probably going to be the key thing you'll be working on this week, is getting in touch with your agency, taking into consideration the worksheets that have been assigned to you, but also seek out a situation where you can conduct a SWOT analysis. And I am assuming that if you can get 2 or 3 people in your agency to do it together, that'd be really great. But my anticipation is that they're not free to give you that kind of time. So try to find a person. If not, get somebody who works with their agency a lot. Not just somebody who casually has opinions, but somebody who actually actively interacts. So whether you use an external or an internal stakeholder, that'd be great. Actually using the director, if the director is willing, would be the best. Those of you who are working with teams, and I know, Sherry, you say you already do that, but if you've done a SWOT analysis with your team, you can do that, because we've got 2 people who are coaching, and that would work. Okay. Any other questions? All right. You guys look really serious.
I think it's just funny.